All right, welcome everyone back to Brooklyn Raga Massive's weekly online series. Of course, Brooklyn Raga Massive is a collective dedicated to South Asian classical music and music that is inspired by Raga music. And we've had weekly concert series and jam session for almost 10 years, only interrupted by COVID times. And of course, we've moved online with that. But that's been really fun because we get to go into artists' living rooms and bedrooms or studios, and we get to know them a little more intimately and learn about what they've been doing. If you want to get more involved with Brooklyn Raga Massive, please check out our website. Contact us. We have the Ragas Live Festival coming up. It will be an audio experience for 24 hours, but the last 3 hours will be live in Pioneer Works in Brooklyn. And there should be some great sets of Jay Gandhi, Abhik Mukherjee playing a duet. We have Brooklyn Raga Massive performing in D, uh, our unique composition, original composition, and also Inov Ganawa. But we're really lucky to have Samyukta Ranganathan today with us. Samyukta is a South Indian classical vocalist, Carnatic vocalist, but she's also deep into voice pedagogy, and she studies at the Voice Study Center with the University of Wales, Trinity, St. David, and getting her MA in voice pedagogy. So, Samyukta, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really happy to be here and get nerd out with you. So that's always fun.
That's great. That's what we want. That's what we want. Um, One question I've been asking all of the artists that we talk to is
Mhm.
how has your music changed or been affected by COVID times?
Um, well, for music itself, I think going online was it forced me to learn very quickly to be able to do some sound engineering stuff, and how do you record and edit and work with artists that are kind of all over the place and kind of thing, that kind of thing. So, in terms of that, it's been interesting. Getting into my own practice has been also good because you kind of have to stay home, and when you're home, you can introspect and really push the practice to the next level, I think. And then I think the biggest thing that's come out of COVID for me is the ability to do this MA program. I think as well. A few years ago, 2015, I did a course with New York Vocal Coaching with Justin Stoney on voice technique and vocal training, and how to apply it to teaching my own students. And since then, I kind of got bitten by the bug, and I really wanted to get more into what it is to be able to really understand the voice. And I'd been dying to do this since 2015. And when COVID hit, the opportunity just, I couldn't miss it. I said, I'm just going to go head first into studying this. And actually, the reason I did it first was because all of my students kept coming to me being like, I'm feeling uncomfortable up here, or I'm feeling like I'm pushing, and I didn't have the words to explain to them how to fix it because I was never taught that, right? We just kind of luck into good technique and you go with whatever you've got. So that kind of started my journey into it a little bit. And then from there, it kind of took on its own its own life, and that's what I'm at right now. So
Great. Well, I know you've been diving into this for a number of years, though, in teaching this as well, right? Before you started this MA program, I remember that you've
yeah,
sharing about how you can offer your services that way.
right.
Um,
So that was when I got the voice teaching certification from New York Vocal Coaching,
right.
and then I and then I started to help Carnatic and Hindustani singers to a certain degree, as well as people who sang in film. When I was in India, there were a couple of people who sang in like playback singing for film, and they would come to me and we would work on their technique a little bit here and there. Just, artists who are up and coming, no big names or anything like that, not yet anyway. So, just helping a lot of Indian vocalists with their technique. And getting them on track also after injury. So a couple of them would come to me and say they had nodules, they had rested, the nodules went away. How do I make sure that I'm not hurting myself again? And I would try to help them out with that. And I would work in conjunction with the speech and language pathologist that I knew in Chennai when I was there, who also happens to have written a bunch of articles on the subject. So it kind of worked out nicely that way.
Great. Well, why don't we get into your presentation?
Sure. I will start. Please interrupt with questions.
Yes. And the audience, feel free to type in the YouTube live chat there if you have any questions or comments. We'll be monitoring that.
Okay. So for some of you who sing Carnatic or Hindustani music, this stuff should be, what I'm about to say is just very elementary. But so we're all on the same page. I'm just going to, lay the groundwork here. So when we start learning Carnatic music, we start learning at a young age. We set a shruti or a pitch of a drone, and then we kind of practice around that drone, and that changes as you get older. Also, when you're taught this, you're taught it in an imitation style. So I listen to my teacher sing, and then I imitate them. That is just the basic structure of how music is taught. You get set a pitch when you're younger. It changes as you get older, and whatever you learn to sing, it's an oral tradition. It's passed down from your teacher to you. What I found there, though, is there's a gap between how you should sound and how to get there. So that was one of the first things I started to look at when I was starting to research this topic. I realized there's that little bit of like, okay, that's how I should sound. I'm not quite sure how to get there, so I'm just going to imitate and hope that I match it. The first things first is that one of the things that we were told as we were growing up is that you need to sound bold, open-throated, sing in your real voice, not your false voice. So there was a distinction between real and false, and I'd heard that my whole life growing up. It's kind of akin to, I think, when the two registers, we would have thick fold or thin fold, chest voice and head voice, M1 or M2.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, what is when you grow up? You hear this. You said you heard this growing up. So but that's in the Carnatic music context, right?
Yes.
Do they talk about it in the same way as Carnatic music context as opposed to other vocal style context?
Right.
Western singing.
Yeah, so in Western singing, I think the registration is fairly clearly defined. It's, not clearly defined. I take that back. It's defined as chest and head. Chest being your strong speech quality voice, and head voice being your lighter register, or it's also called M2 or thin fold, where you make a lighter, sweeter, maybe a different sound up there. And in Carnatic music as well, because devotional lyrics mean so much, we want to stay as close to the speaking voice as possible, because diction is important. The words that you say are important. So for that, you are always told to use the quote-unquote real voice, which, from my understanding, it's the equivalent of a chest voice in pop music, or M1 or mode 1. Kind of thing, which is a terminology used in the Western genres of singing. So oftentimes you'll hear, don't sing in your false voice, sing in your real voice. The how was missing. How do you get a student to do that safely without shouting as you go higher? Because that would be the tendency.
The real and false voice is kind of a terminology that came through the Carnatic studies. Okay.
Yeah, but I think think what the reason false showed up was because they had heard the term falsetto at some point, which is also used in Western classical, and they took that to mean false and was considered poor voice quality for the genre, for our genre. So if you're saying don't sing in your false voice because it's not authentic to the style, then you would want to use your quote unquote real voice. But how do you take that higher in your voice, where the voice maybe wants to quote unquote crack into your false voice? How do you manage that transition? Register transitions in all genres. So going from you heard me switch I did it extremely dramatically, but you heard me switch from what would be my speaking voice to what was a really light voice up there, right? So that would be a very drastic register shift. So we want to avoid that in Carnatic music. We kind of want to blend your real voice as high as you're going in your register, in your range. You want to maintain that strong connected quality all the way through to your upper register. Again, how? So as I was reading these articles, I was realizing that the how was missing. Oh, don't sound like that. Sound like this, right? But how do I do that without yelling? Or maybe I have to reduce the tonic that I sing at in order for me to be able to do that. But then my low notes get hard to reach. It doesn't feel right in my voice. So that's where I said, okay, the first paper that I'm going to study is going to be on registration. Registration basically meaning the voice's transitions as it moves up and down its range. So chest voice being a register, head voice being a register, or M1, M2, etc. Once I started that journey, it actually turned out to be much more complicated than I was imagining. So, which is good. So I have a lot of material to study later. One of the, let me just take a quick look at my notes here. Hold on. Right. Okay. One of the other issues that I was finding is that there wasn't a lot of material on the subject for Carnatic music. There was some, not a lot. And the other thing that the research into registration led me to, when I was looking into articles for Carnatic registration, what is the registration that we use in our genre, was that strain and hyperfunction in the high range was a common complaint. It came up as a common complaint amongst Carnatic singers. So when I say strain, it's like I'm straining to reach the high notes. It's not comfortable. I'm getting fatigued quicker. The other thing is when they actually scoped these singers to see when they came in with a voice complaint, this particular study scoped the singers to see what was happening in here. And they found that the muscles were over-functioning in order to be able to phonate or make a sound. So strain and hyperfunction being, you have to sing a 2.5-hour concert. You can't do that if you're going to get fatigued within 45 minutes or so. So that set me on another path being like, okay, I need to figure out what kind of strategies we can use in our range so that we are more efficient singers as we sing our 2.5-hour concerts, as we sing up in our chest voice or in our real voice up into the high register and back down again. So a couple of things that I started to look at in the first paper was what other genres can we take from, because the research in our genre on how to be efficient, or the pedagogy associated with how to be an efficient singer, was missing. There was nothing there. So I started to look at, okay, what is the closest genre that we can pull from, where we can take some of the strategies that they have and see how it works for us. And given the speech level quality of South Indian classical music, so I'm going to be speaking my words to you, right? So Yanakar Tunai, I'm going to be saying those words to you. So it meant that it was extremely conversational and in the speech quality area of the voice. So given that, I think I started to realize that it was not quite Western classical. It actually wasn't at all like Western classical. It was more like musical theater or pop or CCM, those genres that are very diction oriented, very speech related, that seem to have technique that could work better for the classical Indian or South Indian music specifically. I should also qualify, I'm not looking at North Indian music, because when I started looking at it, I realized the technical needs for North Indian music was significantly different, especially in the high range, compared to South Indian music. So that's a whole other rabbit hole that I refuse to go down right now because I don't have the time. I will, though, I will. So one of the other thing that's very similar with CCM and musical theater and pop music that we have is our ability to be extremely agile through a series of notes, and it's done in the same range as well. So a briga or an akaram or a tan gesture for North Indian music, and is similar to a riff or a run or a melisma phrase in pop music. So and the voice is also, is bold and well projected and all of that stuff. So it seemed to make sense to pull from CCM genre how to actually add an effective technique to your practice so that you become a more efficient singer. On that note, before we get into actually the strategies themselves, I will also kind of explain to you what I found in terms of the actual registration itself. So both male and female singers, I think we sing in and around. Let's start with the female. The estrogen developed voice, I should say, or the treble voice. We sing between, on an average of G or G sharp, below
That's as a sa.
That's the sa. The drone sa. To G sharp above the octave, that's the main octave. We go about a fifth below and a fifth above. So that's the general range that we use. For men, on average, it's about C sharp. Same thing, about C sharp, a fifth below, C sharp above, a fifth above. So it's 2 octaves there. So the first thing I did was actually mapped out, based on literature that was already available, where our passagios would be, taking the term from the Italian term there, where a passaggio being, where is my register going to shift? So where will I hear, if I'm not well trained, where will I hear that audible shift in my register? When I started to look at that, I realized that it was actually in and around, there are few register shifts that do happen in our range. I find that when I teach male singers, and this corresponded with one of the major register shifts, it was in and around D4 to F4, which is above their high sa. Is exactly where I would find it a really hard time to help them control their register shifts. They would immediately start to shift. By the time they got to their F4, it would start to wobble, and we would have to create some sort of strategy for them up there for them to handle it. Similarly, in and around an A or a B for women, so around their where would that be? Hold on. So from if you're going up to your high sa, then by the time you get to your high ga, there's already some sort of belting that's going on up there, and when you cross it, there's an audible crack before you get to pa. Mm-hmm. So ga is where everybody feels super comfortable belting on ga. And that's what the high ga. There's a nice belt that forms up there, and then the minute you cross it, ma gets to be a little okay, I can still belt it if I try, and then pa, there's always a crack. I don't know, it's always around that, which is a D sharp for a G sharp singer, right? That's right. Yeah. So So I mapped these out to see where the passaggio shifts were, and I tried to correspond them back to my own students, and I found that they matched pretty accurately. Like, yes, we do have a couple of passaggio areas that we always kind of struggle with. That either.
How did you map it out?
So I looked at articles that or studies that were written by people studying registration. It's been around for so long. I think one of the people that I've read calls it a snake pit. There's a reason for it. Like, the more you get into registration, the more insane it becomes. And I'm coming to why in a moment.
Okay, all right.
So I took those articles and I kind of said, okay, fine. So when they studied it, they heard, I think they did a bunch of studies. They looked at voices, they looked at spectrographs, I think, in some cases. And so lots of work has already been done in mapping out registration. So I kind of pulled together all of the literature and I said, okay, how can I apply this to Indian classical music? And then I kind of applied it to that. And then I said, okay, yes, it does quite match up quite well with what I see while I'm teaching my students. Again, this is shifted. Obviously, if your tonic is lower, if you're a lower singer, or if you're a higher singer, it'll shift a little bit according to that. Just because, the vocal tract is different for tall people as it is for short people, etc., all that stuff. So from there, I said, okay, what else is happening in Indian voices that is not being answered by the literature? And one of the things that I found was the agility gestures. So for us, we have several ornamentations in classical music, both North and South, but I'm going to focus on the South for now. We have the akarams, which is like, the fast phrases up and down the scale. Then we have the brigas, which are the lighter, quicker movements through a series of notes. Then we have the gamaka, which is quite unique, I would say, a little bit to South Indian music. And that's proving to be extremely interesting to study. And then there are several more anuswarams, or the grace notes that we use when we sing, and those kinds of things. Now, and as I was reading through the agility gesture, I wanted to see how we would define an agility gesture for Indian music. And there's not much. There was one article that was written by a North Indian musician. No, he studied the musician. Where a tan gesture, tan being like, so that kind of being a very North Indian tan kind of gesture. What that was is basically a give and take between the thyroarytenoid muscle, which is going to encourage a thick voice for you, and the cricothyroid, which is your pitch changer muscle. So it's a quick dip of the frequency of the pitch that you're singing and back up to the fundamental frequency where it kind of holds the pitch for a little bit longer. Why was that important? Because as I got into registration, I was going to get really technical. So stop me and correct me if I've missed missed something there. When we look at registration, then and we say we want to sing in a mode 1, a strong voice. Typically, that's a very strongly held thyroarytenoid muscle. So from what I've been reading, there is a lot of questions around that, and people researching this be showing other facets to all of this. So, but if the tan gesture is basically takes away some of that contraction of the thyroarytenoid and puts it back, and then takes it away and puts it back, and takes it away and puts it back, then you cannot be singing like this the entire time. So we probably are not actually in a full-on chest voice when we sing. We're probably in some sort of a mixed register, which is a whole other snake pit as well. Okay, a mixed register is the transition zone between the really heady voice and that really chesty voice. The mixed register is kind of that in that transition zone. How do we get to that? It's a whole other thing. So music teachers out there, voice teachers out there, have several amazing techniques to get you there. One of it is teaching the chest voice to lighten up as it goes up. The other one is starting from your falsetto and then slowly adding strength back using certain vowels and consonants coming back down into the chest voice. So you're not overly pressed or overly pushed when you're singing that. So that's some of the strategies. I'm going to move over to strategies because there's a whole other section on registration that I wanted to talk about, but I think that'll get super confusing.
One question somebody asked, this is the same thing my choir teacher referred to as the break.
The break.
The break.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
voice where it changes.
Yes, correct. The passaggio is, the break, or, we call it crack also. Yeah. Oh, I cracked. You could really hear that I yodeled over there. I really cracked into my falsetto, or my false voice. That's exactly what it is. So given that, we want a kind of a mixed register. We don't want to be singing in a full open, chest voice, because we have this kind of agility gestures that is so prevalent in what we sing. Maybe what we want to look at is like, how do we use certain techniques to kind of lighten the load slightly, while still maintaining a nice strong voice. And that's what led me to another CCM strategy, belting strategies and twang strategies. Twang being, this will lead directly into acoustics, twang being that like really bright sound that feels like it's like coming out the front of your face, like you'll feel your entire head buzzing. So if I can demonstrate that.
Please.
So I can take a regular ah. Ah, I'm singing it fairly neutral. If I make it bright, ah, can you hear that I've added some E kind of overtones to it? So E, so
again.
So I'm going to go from an E, a straight ah, then I'm going to go from an E to an ah. So ah, then E, ah. I've kind of brightened it a little bit. I have headphones on. I can't quite hear what I'm doing. So E, ah. It's very mild. I'm not super good at demonstrating this, but I've gone from a kind of a neutral place to a bright place using something back there, probably my pharyngeal column, my tongue position, things like that.
It's not just the vowel sound, but it's more than that.
So so now we're going to get into the acoustic side, which is what I'm studying next. So this is super, super new, very, very novice in how I'm studying this right now. But that's where the twang took me next, was to study the acoustics of the vocal tract for Indian classical music. The other thing is, I think we do end up belting in Carnatic music. A lot of the voice that we use is nice, bold, strong voices that's always exciting. There's a sense of drama to it. And, it's like you're really speaking from the heart when we sing Carnatic music in that voice. I do have to say that a lot of the singers that come to me saying that I have range issues and things like that, I do see a lot of signs of vocal strain that could be inadvertently caused by really chesty phonation with poor strategies to help them accomplish it. Some of the typical signs of hyperfunction or strain is like chin jutting, raising, pulling this up. Neck strain, I see a lot of like this popping, that, facial strain, kind of like forehead. And then some of my students tell me that jaws hurt after they sing because they've carried so much tension in the jaw. So the goal of all of this is to find an effective, efficient strategy. And I thought, okay, if belting and twang, if musical theater people can do 8 shows a week and they're like kind of in their like chesty mixed voice the whole time, there has to be something that they're doing that's right, which is what took me to twang, which is then what led me to acoustics. Now, I'm going to stop there and see if there's anything else I should be talking about. Or if I ran through this so quickly, I should probably go back over something.
This is all fascinating and amazing. Okay. We have some questions. Rupa Mahadevan, our good friend and great vocalist, asked, how does breath come into play with this mode 1 chest-oriented style? Does one require more diaphragm breathing over the other?
Interestingly, no. I think I read an article a while ago. I wish I could quote it. That says that the breath used for like a strong belt versus like regular non-belted chest voice singing is not different. As long as what I see in my students, so I'm going to switch a little bit away from what I've been studying to what I've seen in my students, is that if the breath isn't efficient, invariably you just end up getting exhausted. When I say an efficient breath, I mean, you see a lot of this happening as well. I'm going to show you my neck so you can see. This is what I see a lot in Carnatic singers. They go, it's a song to sing. Okay. You sing this? So this is so tense as I'm singing that my neck has completely tensed up and I'm breathing higher and higher and higher into my chest, that I've created a whole bunch of tension because I'm not able to take enough breath and I'm not able to efficiently exhale. I hope that answers it. So
so then she continues, and also when going through the break, what role does breathing play in supporting the transition?
Oh, it's a whole other rabbit. No snakes. No. So ideally, that you wouldn't need to over exhale on the break, because what I've saw recently in the study that I'm doing with the acoustics is that people tend to rev up for the high notes. So they'll go, and that pushes into so you're able to really shout it out up there, but coming out of it, you don't have enough energy left. So what ended up happening, and unfortunately, I cannot show you any of this for confidentiality reasons. What ended up happening was he revved up nicely to that top note. And then as he came out of it, there was a quick Briga melisma phrase that needed to be sung. And he couldn't maintain that energy throughout. So he cracked and the pitch wobbled all over the place. So ideally, I think one of our lecturers said this once, the less effort you feel, the more efficient you're probably being. So if you're feeling super effortful up there, so breath support or, give it more support is not necessarily do more with the breath. It's to be more efficient, which feels like you're doing less. That'll help you, I think. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
I think so for me. We'll let Rupa chime in, or anybody else.
Yeah.
There's lots of people who are sending they're loving the demo and
cool.
enjoying everything you're talking about.
Awesome. So. It's a fun topic. It also gets extremely technical. So it also gets I get extremely nerdy. So I kind of disappear into it. So please stop and ask if something is not making sense.
This is the time for nerding out.
Right? Awesome. I love it. So I'm gonna go on to to acoustics. I think. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Let's skip SOVTs for now. May come back to it later. Okay. So my acoustics subject is actually I've just started the research into it, and I'm going to be writing my first project on it coming up shortly. So for those who don't know, I think there may be someone who's watching who does know all of this stuff better than I do. But those who don't know, the acoustics of the vocal tract plays a huge part in speech and in singing. So breaking it down very simply, my vocal folds is creating my pitch. The vocal tract is resonating those pitches out to your ears. And unlike other instruments that are basically set in stone. Once you create the shape of the tube, it kind of stays the same. For us, the really cool thing about our voices is that it does so much. It can change shape. It can boost frequencies as it sees fit. It can, when you lower the larynx, you're changing the tube shape. You're making the instrument larger because you have bigger resonance tube to play with, for instance. For Bollywood singers, they tend to raise their larynx way up, making the tube shape really small. But if you see them sing, they're not singing loudly, they're singing really close to the mic. So I think one of the lecturers also pointed out that having a microphone has changed how we sing. As well, we don't need to push as hard. We don't need to make larger sounds. And even for Carnatic music itself, even when we didn't have a microphone, we didn't have an orchestra behind us like Western classical music. We had to sing over a mridangam, which didn't really compete with your voice. So I think that would change the way we approach the way we project our voices as well. So given that the vocal tract can do so much, and there's been so much work done on vocal acoustics for Western classical pedagogy, and lately it's been just taking off. There's also some being done for CCM strategies as well, musical theater and stuff like that. But not too much being done in the classical Indian field. A little more in the north than in the south. I think in South India, I found one paper in my search about formants and resonances of the vocal tract for Carnatic singers. There's a lot more being done in the North Indian genre, I feel. So one of the things that I did find is that looking at the frequency spectrum slope, so all the frequencies that we use, you kind of, I don't know if I should share my screen.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not going to, gosh, it's so technical. Hold on. Okay. So this is, let me just make sure. Okay. All right. So this is a program called Voce Vista, which I have spent hours geeking out on. It's daylight.
Amazing program.
Yeah, it's daylight when I start, and next thing I know, I look outside and I'm like, oh, I should be eating dinner soon. It's really awesome. So this, I think, is my voice. It is my voice.
So can we just back up and say what are we seeing here?
So this is basically all the frequencies that my voice is producing when I sing. Okay, so it basically takes it takes a singer's, whatever they're singing, the sound wave, and breaks it down into these frequencies. So what you see on your left is in hertz, the frequency. You can also look at it on a piano scale. When you see it's red, it's more intense. When it's blue, it's not so intense. And on the right, you'll see which frequencies are peaking. So it's just another view of the same thing. There's a lot more you can do with this.
Right. And it really shows us how many frequencies are always going on at once. All singing is overtone singing. All music is overtones music. Yeah. We perceive the note as a or sa, but there's so many frequencies going on, right? And they define the timbre of the sound.
Exactly. So apart from the laryngeal registration itself, which is the thyroarytenoid, the cricothyroid muscles, all of that stuff, there is a whole other group of register events in the acoustic registration side of things, which may or may not correspond to the laryngeal registration. So when I say head voice and I say chest voice in a laryngeal setup, it just means amount of vocal fold contact, how thick the folds are, all of that stuff. I completely left out, and I just found out about this. So you explore with me here. That there's a whole bunch of register movements in the voice that happen because of the acoustical changes that happen in the voice. I'm not going to get too much in depth, but I'm just going to show you how fun this is, and you'll see. Filter. Okay. So this is my fundamental pitch. This is what I'm singing right now. Okay. This is like, I think what you would perceive as pitch, I think. So let's see if you can hear this. Let me know if you can't.
Yeah.
Right. But that's that.
So this filter is blocking out all the other frequencies, so we only hear that one, band that you define.
Correct. And then, and also it's actually super fun if we go up further. And I'm always curious about these higher frequencies. What are we doing around the 2,000 to 4,000 hertz? Because in Western classical, especially for the male singers, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm saying this right, they cluster their frequencies in this band here to create an extra resonance boost. So how they do that, I'm still working on, but it could be like, again, a pharyngeal spacing thing. So then if we listen to how that sounds, hold on. So there's a lot of like high buzz up there. And then if, let me go down here.
Did you hit the share sound when you shared your screen?
I did, but that one was super low, right? Let me turn it up. Hold on. Let me see if I can, this may get a little loud. Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just go from here, it's fine. So I feel like I'm using something here that's boosting my frequencies a little bit up here. It seems to be, especially as I hit the high notes, you see the intensity goes up slightly. Could I do it better? I don't know. I'm just going to play with that and see how that changes the tone of my voice a little bit. So the other interesting thing I found was I was looking at a lecture today. So right here, what is the vowel that I'm singing? Right. So here, I'm actually not even, okay, hang on. I'm not a good example, unfortunately. I wish I had another one I could show you. So my fundamental frequency, so my pitch that you hear as whatever, A sharp, that is weaker than these two, which is kind of common with, I think even with musical theater, the second and third harmonics here get boosted in musical theater. This particular setup is very similar again to like a musical theater belt that I was listening to, where it's a warmer, rounder, belted sound, and now we're getting into other things. I'm boosting basically the second resonance of the vocal tract by kind of coupling it with the second harmonic, which is this. So the O shape that I'm making with the mount mi, men, to, that's helping me boost the second resonance, the second resonance of the vocal tract and the second harmonic are coupling to help me make that sound come out as strong. This you won't find in Western classical female singers because they sing so high. The really only thing that they can really boost is their fundamental frequency, because when they sing that high, the fundamental frequency, which is basically your pitch that you're singing that everybody hears, that's the most sensitive to the human ear at the range that they're singing. So they don't need, they actually have a much steeper spectral slope. What that means is the fundamental frequency will be up here, and then this kind of goes, this all goes down in a spectral slope like this. But what the reason I'm saying this is I'm pointing out that we are diction based. We like our words to be clear, like with musical theater and CCM. I haven't checked other genres. I'm only comparing with the musical theater right now. And we tend to have similar spectral slope qualities, or this envelope quality, the visuals that I've seen in the musical theater genres that I was just looking at earlier today.
Can we hear this?
Yep.
And people were saying that if we could get more volume.
More volume. I'm gonna try. I don't know why it's so low. It's all maxed up here. I think
it could be that it could be the filter as well.
It could be the it could be the filter. So this is this harmonics being boosted, being sung here. Right? Yeah. I'm gonna add my fundamental frequency to it. Yeah. Whoopsie. Okay, let's see. Is that my fundamental? It is. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to add everything, if I can do it. So there it is.
Can we hear those bands that you were emphasizing again? Maybe in the same place? That'd be very interesting, I think.
Where? You mean?
You were talking about the 2000 to 4000.
The 2000
one, then the mids.
Yeah. So the 2000 to 4000 is an area of interest for me to see if we also use it. Because I'm... okay, here we go. See if you can hear this. So the E is super bright, right? So you can see the intensity went up there when I sang the E vowel as well, which makes sense, I think, in terms of where the formants or the resonances of the vocal tract are located. It would be, for E, it would be up here. So,
you've mentioned, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but you mentioned formants many times. Could you talk about what formant is?
That's also confusing. So until recently, I was getting formants and resonance of the vocal tract mixed up. But I found out recently that the resonance of the vocal tract is the actual resonances being produced by the vocal tract. The formant is how it gets radiated out through the mouth into the listener's ear. So the resonances create the formants. So I'm only going to mention resonances from now on. I think formants is a little confusing. So so this is kind of where the E resonances would sit, I think.
Yeah.
So it gets brighter as the E comes in. You can hear it. So even on the toe, I think I'm trying to maintain some of that E shaping in the back, the brightness of the E in the back, maybe. I don't know. To keep some intensity still up here. I don't know. Again, this is all very, very new to me. I'm playing around with it. I just recorded this today. So, and then if we move up here, I'm not sure what this is. It could be... Can you hear that?
Yeah.
So above 5,000 hertz here, it creates what you call like auditory roughness. I mean, the whole thing, all the harmonics create auditory roughness. I think up here, it's been referred to as steely, edgy quality that kind of fills up the sound. Not everybody has it. I tend to have it, maybe because of where I sing. I don't know. Again, something I'm looking into. So So then if we put all of that together, if I slowly, as it's playing, as I slowly go down, one of the cool things that our lecturers had us do is actually try to keep the frequencies in your ear as the whole voice comes back in. So can you hear them in isolation? I can only do it for a fraction of a second, then I hear the whole voice again together. So I have not been very good at that. So let's see if we can keep. Let's go back a little bit. Hold on. Whoa. So it's really cool. But more than that, I think what it's showing me is, if I were to kind of look for ideas to cross-synthesize other genres, techniques to help us, it feels like we are most like CCM singing, even the acoustic strategies of things. The other thing that I've noted that I cannot show you, obviously because I have, there are participants in my study that I will keep confidential, I have actually taken this information and cross-referenced it with a questionnaire that they have given me on how they perceptually feel as they're singing these notes, if they felt any strain, and if there was strain, what kind of strain was it? And referencing that as well with their videos. So I can see if there's any neck tension, I can see if there's any jaw tightening, and also I can see lip spreading, because if you spread the lips, you're going to change the shape of the vocal tract. When you change the shape of the vocal tract, you're changing some of this stuff. So that's how this is.
Tract, can we? Mm-hmm. The vocal tract is the entire mechanism. Is that
right? Right. Yeah. The whole thing, up until here. Mm-hmm. So, so when you spread your lips, I can go. I'm literally making an ah sound when I really go wide. So for one of the singers, it's very predominant shape throughout, up or down in his range. He had kept an shape pretty much all the way through. I don't know what that means. He had a significant amount of buzz up here in that area. And, and there was a big notch down here around the 3000. There was like an empty band right there. So I'm not sure exactly what that's going to mean, but that seemed pretty interesting to me.
Can that, like a high frequency buzz, can that be indicative of something is wrong with your
Not necessarily.
cords?
No, not necessarily. I think it kind of depends on what it's accompanied by. A high frequency buzz, as long as it's done healthily, I think people use it effectively in musical theater to create like that edgy sound. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily by itself an indication of something bad. So yeah. So for instance, if I'm seeing that, so sometimes this second. There is a type of belting where the second harmonic gets boosted like crazy, and it's being coupled with the first resonance of the vocal tract, which creates a really chesty, belty, bold sound. Again, I have a clip, but I cannot show you. It's a bold, chesty belt, kind of lower in the register. If we're tracking that, if we're using that all the way through the range, it kind of feels like the person is shouting a lot. And if the person is doing that significantly all the way through, and at the end of the song, they're showing vocal fatigue, or they're like, oh, I couldn't maintain my energy all the way through, then maybe what we need to show them is actually switch their resonance strategy to something like this, where it's it's a slightly easier resonance strategy, according to even musical theater people, where you are actually using the second resonance of the vocal tract to boost the second harmonic. It's easier to belt higher in the range, I believe, with that, and it gives you more flexibility. So maybe that's a strategy that we could use for Indian classical singers. So that's, or Carnatic singers, I should say.
Could you demonstrate that, the second resonance?
So that's this. This is, it's tough to demonstrate. So this is basically what I'm doing. That is the second resonance strategy. I tried to demonstrate the first resonance strategy on here, and I couldn't get myself bold enough because I don't think I've ever used it in my life. I think so. I attempted to do it, but I couldn't do it. But it's basically like a really strong, like if you think about like, I don't know, like a really, really strong belt in the middle voice. Like, I don't know. Even that, I feel I still like I'm not getting to that point.
Rupa asks, how do you modify your vocal tube tract, practically speaking, to change your acoustics? What is harmonics in this context?
So you change the vocal tract by adjusting your vowel shape a little bit, but more likely you're probably going to it's like a combination of also just feeling it internally, because it's hard to kind of say, okay, can you close your epilarynx? If I tell you that, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So it's basically like if I want to add brightness to your sound and I want to boost some of the high resonances, I would probably make you practice on an E vowel. If the E is too tight, I might ask you to drop your jaw a little bit. So for instance, if I'm going Sarasakshi me, and it's getting squeezed and like that weird sound that I just did, I would maybe want to open up a little bit. Me, and it creates a slightly rounder sound. That's an example of just kind of changing my vocal tract shape slightly to make a slightly easier sound up there, so I don't feel like I'm squeezing.
Nat is asking, are you ever concerned that importing techniques from Western singing styles could compromise what makes the timbre of Indian classical vocals so beautiful?
Always. That's like my number one concern. I borrow strategies to help efficiency, but I don't think I would ever compromise the sound of the singer. And also, I wouldn't want to make you sound like me either. So it could be my student, but my student comes with a very, very unique voice. So it's more about maintaining their uniqueness, but giving them certain tools in their tool belt so that they're able to be efficient singers if they're having trouble with that. If you're a really good efficient singer, you have no issues, there's nothing to change. If you come to me saying, hey, I just cannot, my range has been dropping for the last 3 years, every year I've not been able to hit my pass, I have to drop my note a little bit more, then I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do. If you tell me I can't sing a 1-hour concert, I get really fatigued and my jaw gets tight, let's see what we can do. I'm not going to change the sound. I'm not going to change your sound as a singer, and neither am I going to change the sound of the genre. That is the number one rule. And through all of this, the idea is to see what fits best for our style and still maintain the authentic sound, and then go from there. If that makes sense. I'm going to stop my share. Okay.
Fascinating. Did you have some other things that you wanted to share?
We could. I think it would get a bit, again, it could be a rabbit hole. The other thing that I should also mention, again, if I could show it, the way we transition between, so our gamakams in Carnatic music is also extremely unique to our style. Most of the complaints that I've been getting is that in the gamakams, it's hard to sustain that voice. So one of the things I am doing, I don't have an answer yet, is I'm going to take the mapping that I did earlier of all of our ranges, and I'm going to map it against where typical acoustic register shifts would happen, and see, and then go back to the videos and then see what happens if we're doing a gamaka on where a particular acoustic shift will happen, and see what happens there. One really cool technique that I did see was where the singer did not know that he or she was doing it, went all the way up, scooped all the way up in the gamakam into the top note of their range, slowly adjusted the frequencies all the way up. It was a quick shift too. Adjusted the frequencies up and then back down again gradually to maintain sort of like a nice smooth transition into the top note and out again, into the break and out again. So I'm going to kind of zoom into certain things like that to see if there are any strategies that we use ourselves, much to Nat's point, that we use ourselves that can then be kind of extrapolated to the rest of the field.
Well, I think this is just amazing. I think you probably had some students out there. I'm sure you're going to get some new students from this. As a matter of fact, I would like to learn more from you about this.
Of course. I'd love to chat about this anytime.
Yeah, very fascinating. And we're so lucky to have you share this with us. And this link, it will live on, so share it with your friends, and hopefully we'll have you back again, and as your research grows and evolves, and
yes,
we can learn more about that.
I'd love to share. There's so much out there that this, and also, like I said, this is a really fresh topic for me. I'm just barely getting into this myself, into the acoustics side of things, and also, it's a topic that is starting to be of interest, I think, even to Indian singers, some in the North Indian genre, but I'd like to extrapolate that to the South Indian genre as well.
I think so. Do you have any kind of concerts coming up, or other online events, or?
No. Oh, yeah. I'm doing. Oh, I don't know. I don't have a link, or I don't have any of that, but I am doing a Hindustani concert on December 12th online. Okay. When I know, I will share it.
Okay.
Exactly what the link is.
Your website? What's your website?
I have two that are again brand new because all of this is just starting to happen. One is, shall I put it in the chat box? Will that be helpful?
I can move it to the YouTube chat.
Okay. First, where you can find some of samples of me singing is samyuktasings.com.
Okay.
And then, if you want to reach me more on the geeky side of things, this is my website here.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we've all learned a lot today.
I hope that it didn't, glass anyone's eyes over. There's a lot of stuff in here. So I'm always happy to chat about this, even if you want to reach me offline and,
Great.
And discuss this.
Amazing. Next week, we'll have Aaron Schrag, who's a trumpet player and shakuhachi player, who also plays Indian classical music on his trumpet. So it's going to be good. And stay tuned for Raga's Live Festival. And all right, that's it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.